1513 was not a year in history that anybody would remember, but three things happened that year which were noteworthy. A gentleman named Ponce de Leon marched onto the shores of what we now call Florida and claimed it for Spain. King Henry VIII of England declared war on France, and that prompted King James IV of Scotland to declare war on England. And it was in Scotland in 1513, during this time, that something appeared which is near and dear to today's guest. It was the first published reference in the Oxford English Dictionary of the word wow. And if you're not sure what wow actually means, it is defined as an exclamation expressing surprise, admiration, sorrow, and even commiseration. It seems to have all of our emotions covered, but in modern times, we use it mostly as an expression of astonishment and amazement. For instance, be the change you want to see in the world. Wow, what a concept. Lynn Rose is a guest on the climb to the top. Wow, what an honor. Or that singer. She really wowed the audience. And our guest today uses that word for something that speaks to the soul of every individual. And she turns this concept into anyone becoming a wow maker. In other words, those with the power, all of us, to astonish and to create a platform as a change engine to create who we are and what we want to be in the world. Wow Maker is a one-stop shop for transformation and community in action. That all of us, no matter who we are, where we have the power to wow, to astonish and amaze. But to have that power, it can be taught, it can be developed, and it can evolve. And together, if we all wow, we can become a powerhouse collective for positive change. WowMaker is a platform conceived by founder CEO Lynn Rose. She's an award-winning media and entertainment entrepreneur, business consultant, a mission-driven founder of WowMaker. Lynn has shared the stage and had been on screen with the likes of Meryl Streep, Matthew McConaughey, Tony Robbins, Deepak Chopra, all the people we've come to love and admire, and countless other luminaries. And behind the scenes, she has worked with billion-dollar CEOs, celebrities, thought leaders, experts, all in the service of wow, astonishment, and amazing. That is Lynn Rose. Welcome to A Climb to the Top, Stories of Transformation. And Lynn, welcome to the show.
Chuck, I swear, wow. Wow. That was perhaps the best introduction I've ever had. You
Well, thank you
literally,
very much. I appreciate that. I think the important part is in your business, you have captured a word, and it's a very simple thing, and it's only three letters. Yet, I don't think there's anyone who has a command of English language that doesn't maybe not be able to define it, but definitely understands what we call the wow factor. And you seem to be the only one in the world who said, oh my God, I can capitalize on this. Was this conscious? Did it come to you one day? Or did it just evolve and you said, oh my God, this is what I have?
interesting. I, so people would often say the word wow around what they were seeing on stage. And also, if people understand the background to even be able to get there, which I'm sure we'll touch on at some point as we talk.
Yeah.
Um, and so I got to really see that, doesn't matter where you come from or where you started or what you have, you can actually develop yourself to be able to create, to step up in the ways that you wish and you want. And so I then started creating these programs. And I believe wow is just a word that I'd started to use. And then I realized, because I love wordplay, and I realized the core essence of wow, if I may go there,
Yeah.
WOW is an acronym for
Right.
without walls,
Right.
because a wow moment, to what you were describing, it's when we dissolve those barriers to our connection, to our purpose, to each other, to the moment. I mean, that's when we come fully to life. That's when we can feel everything. That's when possibility lives. And when you think about wow, it's connecting you instantly in that moment. It's like everything stops,
Right.
whether that's being in awe of the most incredible art piece, and all of a sudden everything fades away and you're so deeply connected to the power of that art.
Right.
Or you narrowly miss getting hit by a bus. Wow. But all of a sudden everything disappears. You're just really present in that moment.
Right.
And when you can dissolve whatever our barriers to our connection, that's where our power and our presence and our possibility lies.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because I think so many of us, whoever we are in our lives, what we recognize is the power of a moment. And oftentimes, if you think about moment, MOM, and you flip that to WOW, just turn it upside on its head. Wow. Well, that's what I thought about because for so many of us, one thing we never want to regret did we miss the moment? Or what we know that great moments are often born from great opportunity. So this moment and wow come to it because Lynn, I wonder if you agree with me. Most people that we teach, it's not that they don't need to be told what to do. Usually they get it, but they need to be inspired to do it. And that
Mm.
seems to be what Wow Maker is. Is that a fair conclusion?
You mean share what the platform is when
Yeah,
you yes. So this is a platform for the time that we're in and moving forward as I think we're all in this very shifting type of time.
right.
And many people looking for solutions on how they can up level their mindset or even be able to look for a side business and how they can start a new business or amplify and help fortify their current one, how they can help with their wellness, their relationships. They're looking for solutions more than ever. And the social media experience that we all know and love and has wonderful possibilities, it also can be a toxic environment. There's shaming, blaming, and bullying. We are aware now that there's manipulative algorithms or our privacy, individual privacy is violated. And so to create a alternative social media platform that is conscious, positive space away from shaming and blaming that's not tolerated on the platform. This is a platform of community people committed to bettering their own life and bettering each other's lives, and then whatever ways to come together to help better and change the world. And we provide trusted resources free to the community for that. And utilize gamification. Gamification is where you have rewards and recognition, you gamify the process because we are aware Forbes magazine says it can up level results by 40%. It incentivizes and motivates people to take the positive actions they need to and want to take.
Right.
Now we can give a facility where they can track their results and track their impact and be in this environment where you can have the social media experience, but also proactively use it to be able to better your life and know that you can make a difference in micro ways that together as a community add up to macro ways.
Yeah, and I want to come back to that. I certainly want to focus on this because these are the kinds of events that all of our listeners want to know about, and we certainly want to draw them to it. But let's get to know you a little bit better.
Thank you.
One of the ways that we all get to know each other, people instantly go to social media, they go to LinkedIn. And what pops up when we look at Lynn Rose is acting, UCLA, acting in England, in the classical acting tradition. Take us back for just a moment as toward where you grew up and why you went to school for acting. What did you expect it to do? And then we'll take it from there.
Okay. Well, I'll back it up even a little bit in that I came out of the womb just loving to perform. Everything from in second grade, putting on a show for the neighborhood that I'd written and directed, and even sold pretzel rods in the back.
Right.
Doing those types of things throughout all my young life, but also personal development. So performing and personal development were my passion
Right.
as young as I can remember.
Yeah.
So literally in elementary school, I'm reading Wayne Dyer, Leo Biscaglia. Those were the adult books were my kids' choice of books. I just ate it up. And I had a challenging childhood that kind of reared its head later in life, which can happen with things that are triggered. But because it was such a passion of mine, I I was out there, singing, acting, dancing, and wanted to, as always, refine the craft and looking for ways to do it. And I had talent. Now, because of things that had been challenging for me, I'll just say real quick, I'd been abducted by my dad when I was younger.
Mm,
Not seeing my mom for a year and a half, and that
right.
has its own implications. And he was an
Indeed.
alcoholic father. Now, I loved my dad. He was just an irresponsible parent. I think that's a real important distinction.
Right.
And then he started getting his act together again once we got back with our mom and things were shifting and things looked great. And then the rug gets pulled between fifth and sixth grade when his plane crashed as he was flying from one base to another.
Right.
And when he crashed, and this is what's pivotal, um, who I was inside, I got shut down inside. I numbed out and tucked who I was way in the back. And I had talent though. So it was just controlling how the outside came across, but tucking who I really was in the back. And my talent carried me so far. It drove, I went to London and got to study acting from the best of the best and
Mhm.
came back. And as soon as I came back, I got my, like 5 days after I got back into the US from London, I got my equity card, and shortly after that, I got a Broadway show, and then I
Right.
was touring for about a year and a half with that Broadway show,
Mhm.
and then I can go to what happens after that next. But to lead up to at least where you were asking, where that came from, because then I had a pivotal moment after the Broadway show, where then that's where everything shifted. But
I
I
want to explore that
want
because
to
I
make
think
sure I
so
stay
many.
with what you're asking. So
No, indeed. We've had so many great guests on the show, and I'm grateful for your time. And what so many successful people who wake up very mission driven recognize that somewhere along the line on that mountain climb, something happened that caused them to pause, caused them to retreat, retrench, whatever that may be. We all seek to refine our craft, but we cannot expect, or what are the obstacles and the barriers along the way that nobody told you could possibly be there. So I really would appreciate help us to understand you are now trying as actors do, always thinking about being better every day at your craft, but something happened along the way. Share it with us if you would, please.
sure, thank you. Well, also along the way, and this all adds up too, which I think is, ties into aspects we need to remember as we're out there in business or creating what we want to create. But I had my sister was this most incredible singer in pop. She sang better than Mariah Carey. She was just amazing, and I did musical theater. And so up until this pivotal moment, I just did musical theater. I thought I shouldn't even try to sing pop or blues or anything like that because who am I? I mean, she's untouchable, right? So I comparitis, I just stayed in the lane of what at least I was nailing, which was musical theater.
Right.
And in this Broadway show, we'd been around, but during the Broadway show, I had my own challenges as well, which, we'll just move forward we'll get overly detailed here. But as we were about to come back around, and I'll just say one part of it is I had been doing cocaine. It was
Oh,
the cast was doing a lot of drugs,
yeah.
frankly, and I got caught up in that.
Mhm.
But then I stopped and I went, what the heck am I doing? Who am I? What am I doing? And I remember I put that little vial out in this skyscraper in New York and vowed I would never do it again. And I never have. I have no idea who that person was anymore. But now I'm ready to get my life back and ready to start getting things on.
Well,
And
there's a big transformation coming here because part of the transformation is not just what you're going to do, it's what you're going to stop. Because you have to stop that behavior in order to figure out what is the change you want to see in the world. Well, stop that. What happened after that, and where did it take you?
yeah, and we have to be careful because sometimes then we think, so for me, what one of my triggers, and for some people this is the other triggers, is the rug's going to get pulled out from under you. Because I had that showing up, ingrained in me from, when I was a little kid and other ways it showed up. And so I stopped at I'm now ready because of course money that I'd been making, I was making a lot of money during that time too, but it was funneling into that. And now I'm ready to start saving the money and also not no longer have that behavior. And we're now going to go back around on tour and this Broadway tour to LA and San Francisco and the big cities where we already had been before, but even bigger now with all these celebrities and all this stuff. And just get to now start get my life back here. And then all of a sudden we get a 4 day notice that the Broadway show was canceled. And we're all just going to sudden, and I had like all my calendar was cleared. I had nowhere to go. And we thought we are going to be on road for another year. And that there was something about that that triggered the past. And I can't explain it. All I can say is that it triggered like this rug being pulled out from under me, and I lost all ability to sing. I lost all confidence. My whole body got shut down, and now my outside was shut down in addition to my outside. So I went back to LA, and I had also had bulimia while I was on the road. Speaking of changing things,
Yeah.
and I mean, cocaine was done. I was done. But bulimia, I had to go to OA 3 times a day at first just to keep getting through to not do that behavior. And from
Right.
day one, I stopped, but I had the help and support of OA, and then went once a day, and then eventually 3 times a week, and then once a week until such time I was like, who is that person? But I took that period of time when I went back to LA and had to be a waitress because I had to leave the entertainment industry. I couldn't function. I couldn't barely even speak. And I was not a great waitress either. My hats off to
Right.
servers, I
Didn't
gotta
study
say.
that in school.
Oh my gosh. But I cocooned, and I really got internal, and I really worked on myself. I got committed to looking at things that I hadn't allowed myself to really look at, moving through what I needed to move through. And then as I started to get encouraged, like I felt strong enough now to start putting myself out there again. But I had to put myself out there where I dared to fail, dared to be horrible. So I would show up at auditions still not able to sing, still terrified, racked with these voices and negative voices coming at me. And I'd be like, if I loved you, like it was horrible.
Right.
I can't explain it. And I feel bad for the auditioners having to watch me during that. But I would still just at least show up, daring to be trembling, and maybe something will eventually come through. And at one point, there was this big audition that everybody in town was going for. And it was for a 3 girl group that was singing pop, sponsored by a major brand. And we'd be doing a big tour and make incredible money too. I mean, for me, I was in the career for passion,
Hmm.
not for money, but money is a part of it.
Hmm.
And I was almost didn't go to the audition. Everybody in town was auditioning for that. I mean, like, who am I? Compare-itis. I can barely even sing.
Right.
But I showed up anyway, even though I was sick. I was sick that day. And I thought, oh, just show up. And I think because I was sick, there's something that it impacted my walls where they just didn't have they couldn't keep up the fight or block things out anymore. It like let something come through. And actually, my talent came through enough to where I got a call back. And then I showed up again. And then after a series of callbacks, I ended up getting that 3 girl group. And I was like, as God is my witness, I shall never waitress again. And I never have. But
Right.
I started to find my voice again
Right.
and find my talent. And also in the arena of pop music that I'd always wanted to do, but never had the courage, thought, well, who am I? But that began that. And also now I was able to show up in a way that wasn't about just look at the outside, let me control how that comes across. My
Right.
talent carried me. Now it was in an even far greater way where I'm daring to show up and allow the core of who I am to connect to the core of the audience or the camera, whoever I was appearing in front of. And now I was much stronger and better and more connecting of a performer, of back then when I was doing, acting, singing, dancing. And then my career took off. I went on that tour, and then I got other tours and opened for a lot of different names, and I got, TV hosted, and then did shows, and then eventually all led up to where what got me through was transformation. I ate up everyone's personal development books. And OA was an incredible, that's basically a transformation program. It
Right.
should be like Life Anonymous, not just Alcohol's Anonymous or Overeaters Anonymous. They need to have like just for everyone because it's such an incredible program. But
Right.
because I did that work and allowed myself to connect, it opened up and it carried me through because it's a constant process for us to learn and grow and be carried. Otherwise, our default starts kicking in. And I grew stronger and I always thought someday maybe I'll be in that industry.
Well,
And
it's
it,
interesting that when you were at that low point, the common thread I have seen, I include my story and all the 55 guests we've had on this radio program, they said, when I'm at that low point, it's either going to defeat me or it's
mm,
going to define me.
love that.
Well, it's an interesting way of looking at it because just by you standing up, and you've sang songs about standing up when all you want to do is lie down. And I think there's an important lesson here that even though in your mind it may not have been your best self that went to the audition, the alternative is you could have stayed home and nothing would have changed. Yet here
Mhm.
you were fighting your own inner demons and slaying the dragon, and it was a change moment. And I appreciate. Thank you for sharing that story. I know how personal they can be, and I'm grateful for you telling it on this program. For so many of our listeners, you may be struggling with something similar. Is it going to defeat you, or is it going to define you? Well, Lynn, as you were now ascending, you were acting and singing and recording. There was something else I suspect that was beating inside of you. Because while many actors, whatever they do, they shoot a part and then they move on to the next project, there was an evolution as I've watched your career change. What happened in your mindset as to where you decided you were going to take this? Or did it
Mhm.
happen by accident? Help us understand how we got to this wow maker from that point.
Well, I think we all think we know what our life is going to be. We
Right,
all make plans. That whole thing, we make plans and God laughs, right?
yeah,
But
right, exactly.
also I feel like life, the divine, God, our higher self, whatever you want to define it, is our partner.
Mhm.
We're in this together, and if we keep our eyes open and we follow the cues, we are being led along the way too. And I think it's a mix of our will and how we're being led and opportunities presented to us, and whether we follow them or not, it's up to us.
Right,
And I always felt like I had wondered and thought I might get into this industry that I'm now in and been
mhm,
immersed in for decades now. But
right.
um,
And describe
I
that.
remember.
This is it media, acting, singing? What is this to those who may not quite get it? It's a bit of an abstraction.
Right. So I the way I describe it is I come from entertainment and media, and I
Right.
still am out there producing that in different ways, and I participate in that. But then I transitioned into personal and business development, and now can lead the road to how that got there. And then I also worked with some of the best in the world of marketing, and got to combine all those elements together, along with just always been someone who wants to make the world happy, to give back, and would do that along the way. And so, Wow Maker kind of represents all of that in one, and being able to be a collaborator. But I look at myself, I'm now uh, a media entrepreneur is how I call myself. Um, and within heavily in the world of personal and business development. But this is key, because this little key moment, and I could have ignored the voice or not followed the voice, but I would listen to your personal achievement radio station in Los Angeles, and they would play 24/7 personal achievement radio. Tony Robbins, Robert Kiyosaki, Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, you name
Everybody
it.
showed up.
Everybody showed up, and there was this hour-long program by this guy. I won't say his name, but and I remember hearing this show, and I thought it was this hour-long show, and I went, I can do better than that. In fact, I think I will. And I went,
Hmm.
who said that? You know,
was,
but
was that a
I went
voice?
about what? But I went about
Who, me?
investigating how could I get my own show on this, and I'd been doing TV hosting, so I had some semblance, and also, when I would perform, being able to MC an audience, there's some related type of skill there. And I ended up, there's all these synchronistic and divine things that showed up in the way of, like, providence moves too, which the Sir Edmund Hillary did that whole quote about commitment.
Indeed.
And along with Goethe mixed in there. But, you know, and Sir Edmund Hillary, for those who don't know, is a famous mountaineer, actually. First to
One of
climb
my
Mount Everest.
heroes, I will say.
Yes, yes. So, but I had that journey, like all these different dots got connected to eventually lead me where I said, I'm not going to go down these paths that were shown me, because I looked at them, but I got to get fortified to where I walked into that station cold with my little homemade cassette tape and my idea of what the show would be and who I'd bring on, and they took a chance with me, and they signed me for initial 12 weeks.
But you
And
showed
I
up
didn't.
again. You
I
you
showed up.
showed up and you said, "I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I do." Here you go. Another moment that you could have stayed home.
Yep,
Right.
exactly. Or say, well, I don't know anybody. Oh, well. Or,
Right.
okay, I'll go ahead and pay tens and tens of thousands of dollars to a syndicate in that, like, who knows that they have your best interest, right? But,
Right.
which was some other ways it could have gone. But then, and I remember that first day of pressing play for, and you're going to go live on the radio station. I've never done a radio show before. I
Right.
was terrified, but
Yeah.
I still showed up. I still did it. I let myself be terrified while doing it. And eventually I found my ground, and I had some pretty significant people on the show. I ended up becoming the number 2 show on that radio station, and then I got picked up by the national syndicate.
Oh,
And now
that's
I'm
wonderful.
interviewing these guys that I looked up to and that had helped change my life, from Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, um, Robert Kiyosaki, et cetera. And then eventually led out of that, eventually, the syndicate eventually faded out after a year and a half. But again, the divine showed up by an intersection with Mark Victor Hansen at some event where I was just singing. We made this connection. He loved what I did. We stayed in contact. Someone else said, my best friend said, I'm in this program with Mark Victor Hansen and Robert Allen, and I can bring a partner. You want to be my partner? I became the partner, let Mark know I'm going to be there. Mark says, "Oh, well, let me know and I'll show you around." He took me under his wing, introduced me to all these different people, and they thrust me on stage to lead their event as an MC and singer, because I had already done that so many times for, you know, companies and other big events. And then I became their go-to girl, emceeing, leading their events, and eventually speaking at them, and eventually creating my own programs. I got mentored by them and these other big leaders. And then that led me into this space. But that came out of a voice in my car listening to a radio show that had a spark of an idea that I followed. And eventually, like you said, dared to show up even though I didn't quite know what I was doing. I was taking a chance. I could totally have a door slammed in my face. There's other times doors have been slammed in my face, but then you still find a way to show up and pivot around it. Um, you
And
know,
what were you thinking through all of these? And then I want to switch to Wow
yeah.
Maker and really leave our audience. But as you were doing that, were you conscious of what did you learn about yourself through all of these transformations and pivots? Any surprises?
Interesting. I almost feel like, as I feel into it, where I've been learning the most has been ever since then,
Hmm,
where there's been huge things. I've poured my life force, and this has been about the path to get to where Wowmaker is now,
right.
and these massive opportunities and what I put in behind them. And we're about to launch to millions, and something happened. And, uh, you know, I could have then just shut down. I could have um, walked away, and I did let it pause a bit, but it was a divine happening because it wasn't the right time until now. And this is me short circuiting the stories, as we don't take up too much
That's
time.
okay. It's good.
But I reframed it. I think what's important is, it can be disastrous what happens. It can be heartbreaking. But if we get to frame the meaning, everything is the meaning of what it is for us. We experience what we believe. The lens through which we see life is going to create how we experience it. So, why not control the lens of how we're seeing our life, including the lens of our past,
Mhm.
including the lens of the challenge or obstacle in front of us? I
Right.
once did a huge event in 2014 with a partner who was not so great. And it was to support a foundation and help build a village in Africa and train entrepreneurs, and and we met our objective. Those entrepreneurs thought it was the best event they'd ever been at. We got raised enough to build a village. However, because of my partner and certain things that happened, all of a sudden we're owing untold amounts of money that should not have happened, but there were things that were blocked. And I was just heartsick. I had poured myself 6 months into this, but I was determined, I'm not going to crawl in a ball and let this bring me down. And I said, okay, what do I need to do to pull out of this? And I wrote down, I need XYZ number of VIP clients. And I just worked those phones, and I kept this in front of me on a board and just worked those phones. And within 3 weeks, I had created that. So I was able to turn it around. And that taught me, that moment really taught me that I reframed it that I can take something that might seem devastating or even betrayal or whatever it might be, but how can I fuel that into something purposeful? And I fuel that into being able to serve these other entrepreneurs with what I could bring to them, create the income to pay off what, shouldn't have happened, but happened with circumstances with this partner. And it taught me what I was capable of creating in my business and capable of generating because I'd never generated like that before.
Right.
So it taught me so much. And anything that happens, we get to reframe the meaning. And if we can pull ourselves out of shame, guilt, blame,
Right.
and just frame it in what do we do now? And
Right.
someone else might be around feeling that, but that is wasted energy. How can you fuel what happens into you into purpose? And so,
As I recount, or as I listen to your story and knowing you and reading about you and watching you on stage, I felt like so many of these things that you're describing have led you to this opportunity of Wow Maker. Let's leave the show with that. What is it? Why did you do it? And for whom did you create this?
well, as we said at the top, wow
Yeah.
makers where social media drives
We're going to
global
flip it. We're
change.
going to finish the way we began.
Exactly. I love it. You're brilliant, Chuck, by the way. I'm
Thank you.
loving this interview. You're so brilliant. Just
I
so you know, I'm
appreciate it. Thank you.
admiring you every step of the way of how you're leading this,
Thank you.
especially having interviewed lots of people myself. You're brilliant.
We're good. What is it? Why did you do it? And
What
for
is it?
whom did you create it? Let's hear about Wow
Right.
Maker. It's really cool.
Well, being around the world, and I would see the power of people so hungry in the littlest bit that you could give them where they could shift their mindset or they could find a tool or resource and then they take it and run with it, especially some work I did in Africa. And I saw people who just from some random YouTube video they saw of Les Brown or a Bob Proctor, they ended up completely shifting their possibility of what they could do. And they brought it back to their town and what they were able to build and create, and they're hungry for empowerment. Now we are in the US a little spoiled, they're over inundated, not as aware that we have these incredible resources at our fingertips, but we're so inundated that folks don't know who do you trust, who is real, what are resources. And I wanted to create a platform where we get to bring together the best of the best in personal and business development of trusted recommended resources to have the gamification engine so they're incentivized and motivated to take those actions, to create a community committed to that's growth minded, that's positive, that want to help each other and help themselves, and eventually then as a result help the world, and get to create this engine, a global change engine. So we are harnessing the power of social media for good. And that is, I got driven for that because I know what that did for me
Right.
and my past, what I needed and logged onto. That got me through unthinkable times. And so to create a platform where you have that community and that support and the resources to get through whatever unthinkable times or changes or up level where you already are, and be able to then have a platform to make the difference you want to make, because I'm shocked at the people I meet that say I want to make a difference but I don't know how.
Right.
There's so many ways, but now we get to lay that out in a simple way for folks that together all the micro ways add up to a macro way. So
Yeah. Well,
it's a
you are like
change
so
engine
many
for good.
artists, writers. They write what they know. When you sing, and you ask people what was the inspiration for your song, and I've heard some of the originals that you have created. You're singing what you know, and connecting with others because there are other people that feel that's what they wanted to express, but they didn't quite know how. So they start singing your tune. And I think it's beautiful that you're putting it all out there. Now, how do we find you? How do we find Wow Maker? What do you want our audience to think, feel, and do as it relates to Wow Maker? And let's leave it there.
Hmm. Well, first of all, I just want the audience to think, feel, and know that it's like that image of a cat looking in a mirror and a lion is looking back.
Good
And
metaphor.
to know that there is so much more available to you than you can ever imagine. And it lives inside of you in that possibility. It may seem impossible. It seemed impossible for me that I could ever sing pop. And I kept on working on my craft. And now I'm at a whole other level than I ever was, even when I started then singing pop on that tour back then. I found my way, kept growing those wings. Um, and all these things that seemed impossible, things that people see when they see me in front of audiences. I have some footage where I was terrified, but I had found the way to allow what I needed to do to sing to come through. But they have no idea I was terrified, but I still showed up and did what I could do. And you can too. It might seem impossible. It might seem like, well, who am I? Or I don't know how. But there are incredible possibilities for you beyond what you could ever know, and to know that. And for Wow Maker is that engine to support you in realizing what you want to be, what you want to grow into, and the difference that you want to make, and that we can do this together.
And how do we find Wow Maker?
And how do we find Wow Maker? So wowmakernow.com. So add a now at the end of Wow Maker right here. So wowmakernow.com. Currently in this interview, there's a holding page there where you can then be alerted as it comes out, and you can be an early beta tester and be part of an incredible one day we're going to have that you get to set the trajectory in motion. We're bringing all sorts of celebrities and business leaders and thought leaders and support for you. And the platform you can have right away at your ready. And for me, Lynn Rose, my name, lynnrose.com.
That's easy enough. And as we think about this, I want everybody to remember that in the year 1513, somewhere along the line, somebody recognized the word now. That was probably in the lexicon of our language. But all of a sudden, something appeared that said, wow. And people knew what to do with this. And that's our message for our listening audience here. You could delay, you could decide not to show up, or you could say, now is my opportunity to join this movement called Wow Maker. And thank you, Lynn, for coming onto the show, for sharing your story of transformation, but also for the wonderful work that you're doing in Wow Maker to change people's lives.
Thank you, Chuck. And thank you for the work you're doing in conscious leadership, and which really from the top, because we shape the world around us by how we show up.
Indeed, we do. And that's a great way of leaving it. So to our listeners, I'm Chuck Garcia. You can find me on chuckgarcia.com. My guest today was my friend Lynn Rose, who is waking up every day in the service of someone else's happiness, prosperity, and success. And to all the doctors and the nurses who are out there doing what you do, thank you. But to Lynn, even though what we don't do is heal the sick, what you do, you help others to heal themselves. And I don't think there's a higher calling than that. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And Lynn, thank you for having your coming onto the program. I look forward to collaborating with you at any other time.
Me too, so much. Thank you, Chuck.
Good night to everybody.